Welcome, everyone. Welcome to the final spring semester conversation of the Historical Society of Old Abington. Once upon a time, we used to have programs where someone would get up here in front and speak to you for 40 minutes on a given subject, and we finally decided it was more approachable to have conversations where actually you guys can jump into if you want to. But I'll be up front asking questions of our guests. And anyway, but we always start all of our programs with a salute to the flag. So those of you who are able, if you would stand to join me in the salute to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. You may be seated. And if I didn't already say so, my name is Doug Ulrich. I am in my third term as president of the Historical Society of Old Abington. It is my honor to have that position. We have 6 conversations that we sponsor every year. 3 in the fall, October, November, December, and then we start up again in the spring, March, April, and May. We have committees that get together to decide what the conversations are going to be for the next year. And to that end, we actually have a bunch of committees. Another one for refreshments. After the program, there are refreshments in the back room, so we look for refreshments 6 times a year. We have a committee on acquisitions and also one on exhibits. So what I have here, since we renew our list every year, is I'm going to pass around this clipboard, and if you would like to volunteer for any of those committees, please sign up accordingly. And I'll start it in the front row, and you guys figure out how it gets around the room. But anyway, so today's conversation was one that was suggested a year ago, mindful of the notion that the Pilgrims landed in 1620, so we're looking at 400 years pretty quickly. And it's a momentous thing happening, and we're well represented locally in the Massachusetts Society of Mayflower Descendants. So they are our guests today. We have 4 or 5 members in particular who we're going to be calling on to come forward and talk with us. But before we do that, can I have a show of hands for how many members of the Mayflower Society we have here today in the audience? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, great. George Whiting is here. Great. George's father was very active in the Mayflower Society, and so we're glad you were able to make it. George is also a member of the Historical Society of Old Abington, so a shout out to George. Glad you could be here today. And anyway, I'm now going to invite forward 3 of the members, Bill Tinney, Barbara Kelly, and Virginia Muchacho. Do I get it right?
Yes.
Was that a close approximation?
Absolutely.
Say it for me so I get it right.
Muchacho.
Muchacho, that's right. Okay.
And how did I get on the Mayflower?
Would you like to come up and join us? Excellent. And I also learned just today in the parking lot coming in that Bill Tinney is, as of last night, I believe, the governor of the Mayflower Society the Massachusetts Society of Mayflower Descendants. Got to get it right. And what other officers do we have here?
Well, we have Edith Bridges. Edith, would you stand? Is treasurer. Ginny is a member of the board, being a past governor, and she is also our office.
What's the title?
Executive Secretary.
Executive Secretary?
My executive secretary.
You really rank. You have an executive secretary. I don't have one.
I do most everything except sweep the floor and maybe clean up.
How'd you get away with that?
I've been in the office since 2001.
Nice.
Very
And up
good.
back we have my wife Cynthia, who's in the costume,
We're going to bring her up later, actually.
and Beth Anderson Godfrey, who many of you know.
And we're bringing her up later.
And George is our solicitor, free
Your attorney, maybe?
Our counselor.
Counselor.
I like that, counselor.
Counselor sounds good. Will you accept that title, sir?
I will.
Okay.
We have a lot of fun.
That's important. Well, I mean, it kind of leads us into the society in general. I mean, who are the Mayflower Society today? What's the membership? What do you folks do? That's a really big question, so leap into it anywhere you'd like.
I'll start.
Okay.
I'm on the program committee, and when they were looking for a program, I suggested the title to be "We Are Not Your Father's Oldsmobile," with a slash through the Oldsmobile and say Mayflower Society. Ginny Muchacho, Barbara, what's your maiden name?
Foley.
Oh, me, Beth?
You.
Oh, me. Oh, Foley.
Barbara Foley
You're looking at me.
Kelly.
Doesn't matter.
I have 3 Canadian-born grandparents. My father was first generation. Ginny's last name, you can understand, is Italian. And
I was going for Swedish, really.
But my father was Ledegem
your father, do you know what that is?
from the Netherlands.
See.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
They called him Dutchie.
So we're no longer dyed-in-the-wool Congregationalist from Netherlands or Great Britain, huh?
Well,
Well,
most of us here are congregational.
oops.
It just happens that way. But there are no restrictions. In the Massachusetts Society, we have Asian Americans, we have African Americans, Indian Americans, Jewish Americans. We're
I keep waiting to hear that Norwegian in there
Oh,
somewhere.
those go without
Okay, there
saying.
you go, thank you.
because You were blonde-haired and blue-eyed.
Me? No.
But at one time, it would have been Boston Brahmins who were the Mayflower Society, and that is no longer so.
Okay.
So what happened to them?
Excuse me?
What happened to them, she asked.
They had children who married anybody they felt like, or grandchildren who married anybody they felt like.
Why not?
They stopped intermarrying, so that group has slowly dissipated. Yeah, if you go up onto Beacon Hill, you could find some.
But wait, they're Massachusetts Bay, they're not Plymouth Bay.
Well,
No, not necessarily. Not necessarily. We've just become very eclectic or cosmopolitan or whatever you want to say. And honestly, some of the very rich Brahmins who might be left, we don't have a lot of those members. The ladies might belong to the colonial dames by invitation only. And Mayflower isn't like that. It's not by invitation only. If you are eligible and can prove your line of descent, we don't care where you came from or.
Well, that brings up the issue, what is required for membership, and are there costs associated with it, or?
oh
Well,
yes.
yeah.
Okay.
And
I didn't expect that reaction.
some people may fall into their line and do it very easily, and others plug along for 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 years before they
Can establish?
really can establish it. We have our collection called the Silver Books, and they are on the passengers, from the passenger down to the fourth and fifth generations. And those are gospel. I mean, they're as close as you can get to the absolute truth.
We actually have them in our collection in the back room, so
But,
good to know.
They are finding now, as they are going into the 6th generation, we have ladies working to add the 6th generation, that sometimes they find that there is a child who doesn't belong to this Mary and John, she belongs to another Mary and John, that they found through deeds or wills or probate records. And so we lose a kid, but then sometimes we add 1 or 2 children to a family by delving into all of these records. Originally, it was just the birth, death, and marriage, the vital records. But now, sometimes to prove the records, they have to dig even deeper.
Now, is there ever a case where a line is disproved and suddenly you're not a member?
Well, if we just
Because
had,
we know it's a changing thing.
we just had one lady, and I've known her through DAR probably for 30 or 40 years. Her line was proven wrong. She was a life member and considered a life member, and I just got word that now she's been put in a an Alzheimer care.
That sounds,
home.
yeah.
But she was never excommunicated. She was always kept on the rolls. But her line is closed and the paper is marked that way. And I have 13,000 records
Wow.
on Access in Massachusetts. We're working in the 13,000 numbers.
Wow.
And on Access, there is a place where it's marked if the line has been disproved and cannot be used.
Okay.
Until such time as they might find that missing record that will make it,
Put it back in.
put it back in.
Okay. And costs associated with membership?
Well, the application fee is $200.
Oh,
Well, you can guess,
Oh, come on.
you can guess.
That's not-
We are the only, there are now 53 societies under the umbrella of the General Society of Mayflower Descendants. 50 states, the District of Columbia, Canada, and we have just established a society in the United Kingdom, of which I am the treasurer on this side of the pond.
Do you have to deal in pounds or euros?
Well,
or-
they're keeping their money over there, and if there are expenses here for dues, or if they wanna purchase the silver books or some such thing, we're using the American money so that we don't have all of this exchange going back and forth. We're just finding it working out quite well. We'll have to, the senior moment, what did you ask me?
No, I was asking about costs, and you said
Oh,
200, and so
well,
that kind of
the
answered
two,
it.
of the $200, $75 goes to the General Society to approve or put their stamp of approval on all of the work that our state historian has done to prepare your paper. We're the only society that has a paid historian on staff.
Nice.
He has access on the his computer to records that, you know, you would have to dig forever to find them. So when you fill out your line of descent and present it with your check, he runs that line. He can contact the General Society in Plymouth, give him the line, and they will compare it with their records. If you're lucky, you might hit all of the proofs down through 8 or 9 generations, because your kissing cousin has joined down. So the only thing you have to do is work 2 or 3 generations back to it. He can save you a
Lots.
great deal of work. What
And
it-
money.
Yeah, and money, because if you luck out and you're Massachusetts, he can go into the vital records to 1910 and 1915 and pick up birth, death, and marriage, so you don't have to pay for those records if they've been filed
Sure.
in the towns.
Now, I'm thinking the electronic age that we live in must have changed the landscape a lot in terms of doing the research I just look at the genealogical stuff we do right here at the Dyer Library, and have become a resource for it, which is probably why we have your silver books here as well. But can you speak to that change? Any one of you speak to the change that the electronics have made
Oh,
in
it's-
what you do?
It's unbelievable in
Yeah.
what it's done. I mean, I see it. I've been working in the office since 2001. My husband died suddenly in September, a week or 2 after Doc Whiting, my beloved Doc Whiting. And I can see the change. The General Society requires that the applicant provide birth and marriage for them, and the spouse's marriage. And they often say, why that? Well, if there are children involved, we want to know that.
Now, yeah.
Then the next generation, birth, death, and marriage, long copy showing the parentage, and the same for the grandparents. They require those 3 generations as close as you can possibly get. If, for instance, you can't find a death record, the place burned or whatever, if you can provide a census record, maybe the gravestone, you may luck out and find the gravestone record. You might find a printed obituary if you know what newspaper to go into.
Wills.
Wills. 2 secondary proofs will equal 1 vital record.
Okay. So that's verification.
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
The In Massachusetts, because we have a paid historian, it certainly is easier.
Okay.
Because if you just make out the simple form, you can call up and make an appointment to see Jay Lucas, our historian. And within a matter of minutes, he can tell you whether he's got it or whether he doesn't have it. He can even tell you that that line has been disproved or not disproved. We have a woman who, in our society, who had 4 members just disproved within the last, 4 ancestors just disproved within the last week or so, maybe last month. And she went and had her DNA done. And she had a cousin's DNA done. And all of a sudden, there was no match
Oops.
in that DNA.
None of the markers matched.
Awkward.
So she realized through testing that she was not the granddaughter of the woman that she joined on.
Oops. Awkward.
She thinks that the woman was adopted,
Ah.
and so she's.
That figures.
Yeah, so.
How many of you here have done any genealogy?
That's quite a good show of hands.
Okay, to me, it's like doing a jigsaw puzzle or a Sudoku. You want to get to the end. Just be prepared.
It might not be the end you thought you were going to get to.
Right, and we had a woman who works for the HSOA speak yesterday, and one of the things she mentioned is that the Archdiocese of Boston's records will be coming, or are beginning to come online. They have finally allowed them to be digitalized, and that will be a big boom to people who are of the Catholic faith in doing genealogical research. Every once in a while, there's something like that happens. We have word that they're about to announce a new pilgrim.
No, where he came from.
Oh, I was getting excited. I thought,
No, there's only
We had a
so,
stowaway.
only so many who were on the boat. This Caleb Johnson, who was a college student when I first came into the office, we were at 376 Boylston Street. And I remember him because his mail kept coming back, we were trying to find him. But he is truly a Pilgrim scholar. He and a fellow whose first name is Simon is a Brit. And they have worked together in the English churches trying to find some of these records. And I had an email from the Secretary General that during the triennial meeting in September in Plymouth, that Simon and Caleb will be announcing where a pilgrim, they found where he was born or raised or whatever.
Yeah, good.
And there are only 4 or 5 of them that we really know about.
Okay.
Of the 26 gentlemen who left families.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Bill, you spoke in code for a minute there. I never let my guests do that.
Oh.
HistGen?
Historical Genealogical Society of New England.
Thank you. I'm glad I made you
New
clarify that.
New England, NEHGS.
NEH.
They're located at 101 Newbury Street, and they're the ones that are working with the Catholic Church to digitize the records. This young man, who's the head of HisGen, NEHGS, was on our board maybe 20 years ago, and he was an employee there. And he has come up through the ladder and become their CEO.
Nice.
And he has done a great deal advancing their records. They used to be called, their publication was called New England Ancestors. And now, to appeal to a broader scope, it's now called the American Ancestors.
Okay.
And he has various projects going all the time. They're trying now to get a program, they're trying to work, I believe, with the LDS, the Mormons, and
Latter-day Saints.
Latter-day
I'm
Saints.
not going to let you use abbreviations either.
Okay, to digitize the General Society's records, and they're up into the 90,000s now.
They have digitized ours.
They have done ours.
Nice.
We had a Mormon couple who were on a
Mission.
mission,
Okay.
And they were over a year in our office
Oh,
in
I'm not
Braintree.
surprised.
They took over 500,000 pictures of our records,
Wow.
every piece of paper in the folders.
Wow.
And they only went through 10,346, and we're now up in the 12,000 since they were with us.
So you need to come back, is that what you're
No, we're trying to keep up. We
Okay.
have a volunteer who comes in now and is digitizing to keep up.
Good.
But we keep adding to these records. If somebody passes away, I try very diligently to find a written obituary
Mhm.
to add to their folder. So that if you wanted to look up a particular grandfather or grandmother, you might luck out and see their full obituary and read about all the things that they did in their communities. I find that very interesting.
We actually collect, I saw Nancy Reed here, she does local obituaries for us here and contributes them all the time, so we keep up as much as we can as well. I'm curious, Barbara, maybe you're the right person to ask about this, programs. I mean, other than establishing, okay, we're in the society, or we're not, or we used to be, what does the society do with the knowledge they have, with sharing whatever, information and interesting things? I mean, much the way we do programs, do you guys do them?
Right now, we have a really exciting project going on. In the 1907, the Brewster book was deeded to the Mass Mayflower Society from Cordelia Fish of Vermont. The Brewster book is a 17th century book, written, of course, in 1600s, mostly in Jonathan Brewster's hand. We know that for sure. Whether there are other hands that wrote in the book as well, and we're not really sure who they are. But I have a copy of the cover, we can pass that around, and some of the pages. And the Brewster book is in rough shape, as you can imagine, because it's so old. But it is the original handwriting of that era. And so we got together, Ginny, Bill, and I got together with Jim Baker, noted Pilgrim historian, art historian, and everything in Plymouth, and discussed whether or not it might be a good idea to have the entire book transcribed and published in one entity. There have been parts of the book that have been transcribed. They've been published in the Mayflower Descendants, which is our publication, and that started in 1899 by George Ernest Bowman, who was the founder of Mass Mayflower, and also the first editor and publisher of the Mayflower Descendant. So parts of it have been done already. Cable Johnson, who is going to do this project for us, has done some of them in the past, but there are many, many, many pages that have never been touched, and some of them 22, 24 pages are written in Latin. So the question becomes,
Who did that?
who did that? Was it the elder William Brewster, because he was a Latin scholar, he could read and write, or we just learned recently that it may have been used as a secret way to
Okay.
communicate with someone, because not many people could read and write Latin. So we'll find out what that's all about as soon as that gets transcribed. And before 2020, the Brewster book should be in print for us and
Nice.
available to everyone. I've requested that the image of the original cover will be used on this new publication. We're very excited about that.
So not only did they have to decipher the old handwriting, which I've had some experience with that, but they also had to translate from Latin,
Yeah,
from
that's-
Latin of that time,
Yeah.
which.
Oh,
yeah,
yes,
yeah.
yes.
And the handwriting.
Oh,
The
please.
handwriting is
And the book is not in good condition. Many of the pages have water damage on it,
Yeah.
maybe salt water damage,
Yeah.
we don't know for sure.
Yeah.
But, you know, the text will go along and then it stops, there are words missing
Mhm.
before it goes on, but pages and pages and pages, half of it, or some of it are destroyed.
The book,
Well, they have been preserved,
Right.
and now they have the margin, is
Right,
it Lowell,
It's rice, they were preserved in the book was preserved in 1994 by Mass Mayflower, and it's, they use a very thin rice paper to preserve it, so it's preserved now, so it can be touched and looked at, but they were brittle. I mean, all the water damage part was very brittle and breaking off.
We have a parallel story here in that Sam Brown's journal, the very first minister in town, assuming the office in 1712, his journal, and it wasn't just a list of births and deaths and such. There was a lot about what was going on in town, a lot of news. It was a very newsy one. And the Congregational Library actually borrowed it and scanned it. And it had already been transcribed right here in this building, but they did their transcription. And they have it online, which is kind of nice too. I don't know if it's a resource you guys need to know about or whatever, but that one is actually now back at the church, and they're determining what they want to do with it. I keep lobbying for it to come here again. But it was only on loan to us, so our insurance wouldn't even cover it, so it had to go back to them. It is, when you're dealing with
The Brewster book
documents like
has
that.
genealogical information
yeah.
on it, starting with Jonathan. He decided, I better write all of this stuff down. Prior to Jonathan Brewster, who was William's son, that wasn't in there. And then it has lists of supplies you would need to cross the great ocean. If you had 30 men, 40 men. It also lists how the deck should be planned out on this boat. The seeds you should bring with you to plant here.
So they grow.
Yeah, that's
Children's drawings are in the Brewster book.
That's great.
Letters, copies of letters that had been sent. So it was a notebook.
Tell him, Barbara, how much it's worth.
Come on, it's
Well,
priceless.
It's
priceless.
It's priceless. Let's leave it at that.
We've had these conversations before. They're hard to relate to.
It's locked away
It is lucky.
in a
Carefully.
safe deposit box.
Within a safe deposit box.
When I became deputy governor, the house and collection fell to me, and when Barbara started volunteering, she found them in an unlocked, cement-lined file cabinet. And one of them is also a book called The Fitch Diaries, and that is about 25 years of traveling up and down the Connecticut River, daily annotations. And these two books cannot be sold,
Ever.
even though
Never. They were deeded to us.
they're in terms of, George knows all about that.
Yes,
He
he does.
busted
He
up-
helped us.
He busted my bubble. Suffice it to say, they're are over six figures.
Of course.
And seven figures, yes, seven figures.
Inflation is a horrible thing.
So what we're doing now is deciding on, or we're beginning to look at and decide on where the books are going to be housed on long-term loan. And we've had several societies approach us. But again, it's got to be somebody who can insure and guarantee the safety of it, and that's very, very difficult.
Yeah, and the stuff they have locked away here too. So yes, we all are guardians of and trustees of these documentations that are so important to our history.
We had a young man in the office last Wednesday who's the second in command at Plymouth Plantation. And he's working on his PhD dissertation. His name is Richard Pickering, and some of you may have seen him do his interpretations. The first time I saw him was probably 25 years ago, and he was John Jenny, the miller. And now his beard is graying and whatever, and he does Elder Brewster and William Bradford.
I could do that.
And he did Robert Cushman and did Thomas Weston for us, the man who went out on the Wessagusset sortie, which maybe some of you are familiar with. And Barbara and Bill went to the vault and brought the book out, and he sat at the table in our library. When he got through, it just absolutely blew his mind, some of the pages that he saw in there. One of them were notes on a minister's sermon. He said, "You just can't believe what this will do to my paper."
That's
Well,
great.
He said that it was common practice in those days when you went to church service, that the father and the family would have a notebook and he would write down the highlights, so that when the family gathered in the evening for prayer and reflection, he could say, you know, Doug, were you listening to this, that, or the other thing?
No.
And Richard had heard that this is what had happened, but he'd never actually seen it in print, and it was just astounding.
That's
to me.
great.
Very exciting.
I have 2 remaining areas I want to explore with you folks before I call up my next group of your membership. And one is very practical, and the other is going to be talking more about today. As president of the Historical Society of Old Abington, a lot of things cross my desk through emails, through letters, through whatever. And I was kind of surprised back in about a year ago, I guess it was, my godson out in Texas, Stephen Meserve, sent me a list. For the longest time, my dad had a document with a line of the Massachusetts from the line of the Descendants of the Massachusetts Mayflower to us. I thought I'd try to validate, here's what I'm working with after a bit of internet research. So he's provided me with a list, and obviously he would like me to help fill in the blanks, because he's in Texas.
Give it to Jimmy.
Give it to Jenny?
I'll-
Okay.
I'll
She'll give
take
it
it
to Jay.
tomorrow, I'll give it to Jay, and he'll run the line, and
See?
he'll tell you how far.
They make it easy for me, but is this what people
I
should
don't
direct the
know.
questions to you guys?
Absolutely.
Okay, great.
I've been at a dinner party and somebody would say, well, I think I'm a Mayflower
Nah.
descendant. And I would say, really? Well, send me
Tell me, yeah.
as much as you know.
Okay.
And they would, and I would work on it diligently, and they're now members.
Bill's already got this thing half figured out, I can tell already.
I don't have my glasses on, so I can't see.
That's all right.
She's a woodman.
My
I'll
mother
see.
was a woodman.
You're related to my godson.
There you go.
And
Out in
I-
Texas.
Edward.
Oh,
Well, these are the
absolutely.
Meserves from Abington, so they're a very old Abington family.
I know that.
Nonetheless. But the other thing I'm curious about is outreach programs, educational programs, and I know there's a juniors program, and that's what I'm going to talk to next, so I don't necessarily want to dwell on that with you folks, but
We're ready to,
Well,
to move on,
Yeah.
lectures, programs, educational outreach, other than juniors, what are you guys doing? How are people aware of you? How do you interact with the public, other than saying you're a member or you're not a member? What happens?
when I first started to work in the office, I was greeted with a pile of mail that was returned with yellow stickers undeliverable.
Moved, yes.
Now, I'm going back to 2001,
Yeah.
when the white pages and things like that were not available on the computer. And so I was trying diligently to find these lost souls. And one of them was a big family. Hugh Jones' grandpa put in Hugh Jr. and Hugh the Third and grandchildren. And I found one girl in Boxford. And I called her one day, and she said, funny you should call. We just had a family reunion, and none of us knew who our pilgrim was.
Oh, that's funny.
Grandpa was long dead.
The only one who cared.
And shortly after that, I became governor, and I said, hey, it's time that we reach out, especially to the children.
Yeah.
So we established this education program where children in the 2nd to the 7th grade get a book-appropriate, age-appropriate mailing in October, early November, in time for the pilgrims. So that from 2nd grade on to 7th grade, they know that they are a pilgrim.
Okay.
A couple of years ago, we decided that we would send Mr. Philbrick's book to those that we thought were graduating from high school.
Mhm.
And so they would have that. And since Cindy and Beth have come on board, and Alice Von Curran, they've established the junior committee. The juniors that I worked with to begin with were just life members, and it was costly. But they've established this junior committee, which does the same thing with the book mailing. They've established now a newsletter 3 times a year. The kids have word search and puzzles and things that they can color. And it's reaching out to them from an early age. I have 16 people in my family that I paid for life membership. 7 great-grandchildren. So that's the thing, really.
Now, is that gonna get them into Harvard, or what?
No.
No?
And some of them may not give a fig
Yeah.
down the line, but
But they will when you least expect it.
Well, they will,
Okay.
they will, and they'll always know it's there.
There you
And
go.
we also have a scholarship program.
You do.
Yeah, we
See,
do.
this is the sort of thing I'm fishing for here. Okay.
And we are looking at ways to become more public. The library is open to visitors if you call in advance. However, we did downsize, and your library has several of the books that we gave away.
Ah,
One of them is a Pratt directory that
well, we'll be careful of
that
that.
landed up here that
Well,
I had bought, and I gave to the library, and then
Okay.
you ended up with it.
Well,
And it's like that thick and that big.
who better?
Absolutely.
Okay.
When I was doing my final prep to join, this is where I came.
Oh,
Well, I
absolutely.
did as well.
Yeah.
I did, I spent many hours searching here.
Well, I
And
mean,
when I'm
it's,
helping.
it's a feather in the cap, certainly, of what the Dyer Memorial Library is all
Mrs.
about.
McKenna was very generous with her time.
Was she town clerk at the time or not?
Oh, yes.
Or was she here?
But I
Because she
knew her-
volunteers here.
I knew her from serving on the finance committee for 8
Absolutely.
years, so.
Abington's a small town still. Anyway, I'm going to call up the junior folks in just a moment, but I want to make sure that we've covered all the ground that you people want to talk about.
I thought of one thing.
Yes, ma'am.
About, we are under the umbrella of the General Society, and the General Society has a lot of programs going on, and if anybody is interested, you can just look up, Mayflower Society, General Society of Mayflower Descendants. They're having programs at the Mayflower House in Plymouth. Interesting things are going on. And so we're all under that umbrella,
Okay.
and we participate in their programs.
Is Massachusetts the oldest of all?
They're two older,
Okay.
yeah.
We were late to the game?
I
What?
think we're the third one in.
Okay, we weren't that late to the game.
But we are antecedents of the General Society,
Okay.
so that's
Yes.
something.
There you go.
Yeah.
Okay. Any questions before I release this group?
Okay.
Because we've got two more coming up, two more
I
people.
just have one question.
Oh.
Or.
I mean, she's got a file, so.
Maybe it'll evolve into more than one. Anyway, I have a listing here of my heritage.
She's got her genealogical line.
Yeah. and
She came
it
armed.
says Through number seventh generation. A copy of the lineage is on file at the office of the Historian General. And this says Winslow House, Plymouth. It's
Plymouth.
very
Mhm.
old, so
Yeah.
I'm not
Yes, it
sure.
is.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
So, does that mean, and I am number 11. So from 7 to 8, 9, 10, and 11, then I would have to provide these other things, but I don't have to
11
worry
is
about
birth,
going through
marriage, and
7,
death.
right?
If that's through 7, and you go 11, 10, 9, and 7 is here, you only have to worry about the 8th generation.
You don't
Easy
have to worry
peasy.
about the 8,
You do.
You do,
Oh, you do.
You have
yeah.
to make sure you have everything for everything back to 7.
everything back to
Yeah.
7, from 11 back to 7.
Now, can I just interject here? The General Society has, I think, a very good deal. For $25, they will run you a preliminary review.
Oh, okay.
And I think it's money well spent before you put forth your $200.
Right.
And they will run the line and they will tell you how far down it's proven. Your 8th generation may be proven by somebody who's joined on that line.
Right. Oh, I see.
And
You may have a cousin somewhere that joined that you don't know.
Yeah.
Oh,
Well, this is direct, the 8th generation is my great-grandfather.
yeah, yeah.
so that's not hard, honestly.
Those records are
And then
readily
my-
available.
Then my grandmother and my father and me.
We had 29 applications in the month of April.
Oh, wow.
We're growing,
Uh,
and we expected this because we're approaching 2020.
They all want to get on the boat, but we haven't sunk yet.
I thought that ship had sailed.
There's always room for one more.
And the other interesting.
Lifeboat, yeah, right.
The other interesting quip is, the closer you get to meeting your ancestors,
There we
the
go.
more you want to know about them.
I noticed there seems to be a lot of intermarriage. The
Cousins,
Big
all
names.
Yeah. Only if they stayed in Plymouth County, you get a lot of intermarriage.
Well, I haven't got the first generation right up till now, but it says here that Samuel Smith married Mary Hopkins in 1640 in Eastham, and Mary was the daughter of Giles Hopkins, who came to America as a boy aboard Mayflower. So would that make our line?
You'd be from Stephen.
Stephen.
Stephen was the father. Giles is the second generation.
They know this off the top of their head. I mean, that's-
And then there's a daughter, Constance, that married Nicholas Snow.
Could you look at this to see if I'm confused?
I don't have my glasses
Oh, okay.
on. We can
Let's
do
do
it
that
after.
after.
Yeah, we
Okay.
can do it after.
I won't let them run away too quickly. Yes, ma'am.
When you were given the fees, you said it was 200 to join, 75 went to the,
Mhm.
but then you had a paid historian, so that if there's more fees.
No,
over the
no, no, no,
200.
no,
Just
no.
the annual dues.
If you're paying $125 and $75, you're getting $125 value, probably $500 in value for the work that will be done to prepare your paper.
So you'd only have to get your own marriage certificate
Yeah.
and your own birth
Mhm.
and your mother and father's marriage,
And if
And
you
the
have,
grandparents.
if you have a husband, his.
his.
Yeah.
So it's just those,
Well, it depends. I mean, sometimes if the line, you run the line from the passenger down and it only comes through the sixth generation, you may have generation 7, 8, and 9, depends on how young the people were when they got married and when they had children. I mean, some you'll find a 52-year-old man, and it makes a difference the way the generations evolve.
I just wanted to say that we have a member who's an expert on Polish genealogy. We have another who knows a great deal about Italian sources for Italian genealogy. So just because you're not a Mayflower descendant, don't give up on finding your information. It's all in where you go and who you contact. And it can be fun. It can be frustrating, but it can be fun.
Good advice. Couple more
Where would you go
questions.
for Polish genealogy? Where?
There are several associations locally. You just have to Google it.
You can inquire from the New England Historic Journal, and also Google Polish lineage. There's Tim Frukowski, who's our new webmaster, was just out at the big genealogical meeting in Springfield. In fact, he was dressed in a Polish costume. He said it was deadly to try to get into it. But
Okay.
he goes back and forth to Poland all the time, and
going to Steve Morse, one.
I'm just going to take two more questions before I bring my next group up. Nancy Reed, I see with her hand up over there.
Yes, I was given a wonderful gift by my aunt who did the genealogy for our family. She was a member of the society.
Is that the Reed family, or
No, this would be Nash.
The Nash
It goes
family.
all the way back to,
that would do it?
my grandfather was Bradford and my grandmother was Brewster.
oh,
So
good.
anyways, I have the whole thing all done. I have all the birth, deaths, marriage certificates and all that. So what would be my next step? Making an appointment or what?
No, if you have it all, just, you can download the application.
Preliminary application, run that by Jay
Yeah.
first.
Yeah.
And
Well, if
then-
she has it all,
Well, Jay
Talk
wants
to
to look
me,
at it
talk
first.
to me later. I have a little influence, not a lot.
He was just made governor last night. It's going to his head. One more question from over here before I invite my next group
Well, I
up.
have a comment and a question. The comment is this, you were talking about the Brewster descendants. Well, my wife is a Brewster descendant. And in the Brockton Public Library, I had that whole list right down to my father-in-law. I don't know whether you were aware of that or not.
I'm sure our historian is, I'm not.
Yeah, anyhow,
I'm not a Brewster.
now, Nancy asked, what's the other $125 go for?
the paper, just to type for 10, 12 generations.
Well,
Birth, death, marriage, and the proofs that are
well,
included.
like I said, it's all in the book in the Brockton Public Library.
Well, if you want to join the Mayflower Society, it would have to be proven by first our historian, and then 2 or 3 genealogists at the Mayflower Society also go through every single record
Just because it's in a paper doesn't mean it's accepted.
Not a paper, it's a book.
A book doesn't mean it's accepted.
Anything.
I ran into that because somebody mentioned Constance Hopkins. And she had a daughter, Constance, who married a Snow. Her history disappeared when she was 12 years old. They can find no record of her marriage, or she doesn't show up in a will, and yet there are children listed to her, and I cannot join on that line.
But you got it on another line.
My situation is different. The line is there, each and every
But
one.
they have to find where else, it's got to be in, they may accept that book, I don't know. They may accept that book, they may not. For instance, the Gannett history out here, who was a member of Old Abington families. They accept that because it's well done and it's been verified.
Is that Gannett, Deborah Sampson?
I think so, I'm not sure.
Yes, Deborah Sampson.
That sounds right, yeah.
Was my aunt.
That's the chapter, DAI chapter that Dot belongs to,
Perfect. Okay.
right?
Well,
You belong to Deborah Sampson chapter, DAI.
Yes.
she does. She just gave me some information this week,
What's
so
the name of that?
always helpful.
Who's the junior?
These folks, I'm going to ask to stay with us for refreshments, so you can chat informally with them afterwards. I thank you for coming up, and I'm going
Glad
to,
I mentioned it.
I'm going to now invite a few more members up, starting with, thank you. And Beth Godfrey and Mrs. Tinney, if you could come forward, please. We're going to hear more about the juniors program. I ran into Beth not long ago at a church dinner and began to learn a little bit about it, and I said, we need to make this part of the program. So, welcome. And anyway, I actually came up with a list of questions, which I may or may not use. I like to keep her on her toes. But so just in broad generalities, tell us about the juniors program.
Well, we belonged to the society, but found that we had no young people involved. We needed them. We were all older. And so our juniors, we decided to put together a junior program. And it started with us involving my two grandsons and her grandchildren and Edith's grandchildren. So there were a few of us.
Absolutely.
But we also wanted to do something with them. And so we decided that we would start what they call a peregrination. Every year there would be a tour. And many people didn't know that the Pilgrims first landed down in Provincetown in Cape Cod Bay. And only when they find out that they really couldn't sustain a lifestyle there, that they sailed a little bit across the harbor and found Plymouth.
So it's true that P-Town is still unfit for human habitation?
Something like that.
Okay. Sorry, I didn't mean to go there.
That's all right. So we would start, and we did a 5-year brand of tours. We started with a tour down in the Provincetown, the Lower Cape, and we visited that cemetery in Eastham where Constance Hopkins is buried. All right, and yes, and then we moved up the next year to the Plantation and the Mayflower, and then we moved up to the Alden House. So we took the paddle boat out into Plymouth Harbor, and we hired, or got a person from Plymouth Plantation that would then turn us around and show us how the Pilgrims all came in through the harbor. And you saw the Mayflower from the ocean, and you saw the Jones River from the ocean. When we started these tours, we began to get more people, more kids.
Well, they sound like fun.
And they are fun. And the kids loved them, and their parents came with them.
And learned as much as the kids did.
That's right, and when we finally began to do the boat tour, we had to cap it at 100 because the boat couldn't take anymore. As of this morning, what started with 10 juniors, maybe, we now have 303.
Wow.
Isn't that wonderful?
Fantastic.
303 juniors.
Fantastic.
And they're not just from Massachusetts. They are from every state. They are from overseas. And we keep them from birth until their 18th, and then they have between 18 and 25 to join the regular society and go through all of the genealogical proof that was mentioned before. Now, what do we do for the juniors? It's a $75 fee to join. And in one of the first publications that the Mayflower Quarterly does in Plymouth, we decided to put in this little notice, and it says, for all Mass Mayflower members, check around your home and see if you can locate any youngsters or teenagers. They can be found in the computer or lying on their bed with an iPhone attached to their ears. You can also check the refrigerator. They're often found there at all times at night. We'd love to make them junior members. Birth certificates are not needed. Lineage does not need to be proven. All you need to do is fill out a one-page application that asks for information you already know. We can check that you're a Mayflower descendant. Anyone who is a descendant is given a number, their Mayflower number and their general number. And all this grandparent, usually, or the parent, has to do is put the number down, and we can check that. And we said, and we absolutely believe that the kids you're recommending are your children, grandchildren, nieces, and nephews. We can't see you recommending anybody else.
Heaven forbid, why would they?
And so we began to get more people. And so we do this tour every single year. And we also, in the spring, we send out the Junior Compact, and there were some of those in the table out there, which tells you, this is the tour that we're doing this coming year. And of course, we can't do the Mayflower, it's in dry dock in Connecticut being repaired. And then we welcome our new junior members, 2 pages of it. We have a whole bunch on the scholarships that are available to everybody. You've got a catalog, or a little postcard rather, for Pirates Ashore, and we do also advertise that. And then we put in some crafts. In this particular edition, here's how you can make soap, like they used to. Here's how you can make butter. And they're very easy for young juniors to do that. We put in some coloring pages. We put in,
those.
You want that?
Absolutely. I love coloring.
All right.
What age do they start at?
We start at birth. And so when we send out these programs, we always put, there are these coloring pages, color by number, or something more simple than that. And you were told that every year we send books, or coloring books. Now my great niece, just received her grade 1 coloring book. And she couldn't wait to color in the Forefathers Monument. She copied something and took it into her teacher, so it works. And as the time goes on, the books become better for first readers, for further people. And now, instead of the Filbert book as a senior, we'll be sending them One Candle, and it's a DVD from the Mayflower House. So that is what we do. And we send out twice a year. And then we also, because the governor of the whole society saw how much we were doing and how we had 300 members, where some people have 9 members, came up here and turned to Mrs. Tinney and said, we need a national group.
Oops.
There you go. Go ahead.
We do now have a national group. It's been going for about 3.5 years. Every state previously had a junior membership if they wanted to. But now we have a group so that we can coordinate throughout the country and share information. And I think that's one of the most important things, is to be able to share. And we get questions like, well, if you're in Arizona, what do you do with the children to explain to them what the Pilgrims are like? We're so fortunate here. We can go to Plymouth Plantation. We can go to the Mayflower. Many of the schools do it. Many states, they don't even discuss the Pilgrims in history anymore. And we do have people throughout the country, dressed like we are, who will go out into the schools and they will give talks and speak with the children and do all sorts of projects and things with them. It's amazing, really, what goes on all over the country. So in keeping with that, the Mayflower Society in general, this is the General Society, does do things like this Pirates Ashore. And it's one of their activities. Now, in the summer, in August, the first 4 Fridays in August, they have what they call Pilgrim's Progress in Plymouth. Some of you may have seen them. But what you do is you go to the Mayflower house and they have the costumes. And they will let you take the costumes and participate in Pilgrim's Progress if you like. So as one of our activities for juniors, we have been having families come from all over the country to participate in Pilgrim's Progress. They do.
In the world, you had a group from
Yeah, we had some from
Holland,
Holland,
yeah.
yeah. They do have to make a reservation because you can only have 51 survivors. That's what Pilgrim's Progress is the 51 people who survived the first winter. And there are more and more activities for younger people and for people who just want to participate.
And for Pilgrim's Progress, they march in costume to the beat of a drum, right past the rock, and then up the hill and to where the first homes or encampments were, and they do a little pilgrim ceremony, and then they march back down. And they seem to really like to do that.
It's a ritual.
Yes, it is.
I have 2 remaining questions before I ask the audience if they have any questions. One of them is, as you're talking about how active this group is, do you need to be a Massachusetts member to be in the Massachusetts group? I mean, if I'm in New Hampshire and you guys are doing much better stuff than we're doing.
Come on down.
Okay.
Come on down.
So that is something that you will take people from other areas. You don't have to.
And we also put together a briefer version of the compact.
Okay.
And we send it to every state in the country.
Nice.
And other groups, especially New Hampshire, Texas, and another one, they do an awful lot of work.
Okay.
And so they will send us pictures and write-ups of what they've done, and we put the pictures in.
Nice.
And we suggest projects that you can do. For instance, for the 400th anniversary, what can we do with 400? And I have suggested in the last one, get a hold of the lady who runs the Texas one, because she already did a 400. She's got lots of great ideas. And do that.
Share resources.
Share resources. And
Perfect.
we're going to put together something like that
Perfect.
for the 400 as a contest type of thing, and award things to them. So.
And my last question is, have the juniors been around long enough to talk about I'm going to call it a rate of conversion? In other words, a junior becoming a full-fledged member? Is it too new to have that happen?
It is, and
Numbers.
it's also tough.
Yeah.
We're finding when juniors apply, it's the grandparents, the great aunts, who put the children in.
Put them forth.
It seems as you get older, it becomes more valuable to you, and they want them to have that. And then when, between 18 and 25, this is difficult because mom and dad are paying for their college education, they've got other younger children, working 2 jobs.
Life priorities.
And it's priorities, but they have the information, and since they've been involved with it when they're younger, we're kind of hoping that as they get older, they will.
They'll drift back.
They'll drift back.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That makes sense. It's
Yeah.
just where you're having so much success with it, I was fascinated to know how that translated in terms of the general membership.
We only have maybe 18, 19 kids who have reached that
Who are
age.
there? So you
Yeah,
haven't
we
been
don't
around
have
long
many.
enough to do it.
No, absolutely
Okay.
not. We have not been around that long.
Okay.
I was no different. My mother did it. She did all that research, and she was so happy when
Before
she got in.
computers.
Before computers.
Ms. Stone did all that.
Yes, she did. And said, please join. And
Why?
I went, why? I don't have the money, I'm too busy. And then, of course, I did promise her I would, and I did, and then the next thing you know, here we are.
There you go. Well, there's probably a few things in between, but.
Okay.
Any questions for these ladies about their programs and what they're doing? Because it sounds very successful. I know they give a very thorough explanation, but.
Steve, I don't have a question, but I think you should know that you and I are kissing cousins. You're from Isaac Allerton and I'm from his sister Sarah. We were married the same day in the Leiden Town Hall. We were in Leiden in 1609 and stayed there until we sailed in 1620.
That's what we call encyclopedic knowledge.
My daughter Sarah, Isaac's sister, married a Deggery priest, and poor old Deg died the first winter. He left his wife and 2 little girls in Holland. And the only other thing I will add to it, one of the books that we send, I don't know, is it the second or third grade, The Three Little Pilgrims? It's a wonderfully illustrated story of Isaac Allerton's three children, Mary, Remember, and Bartholomew, and what the voyage was like for them.
Okay.
The book's on sale at the Plantation and the Pilgrim Hall Museum. It comes in softcover and hardcover, but if you have children or grandchildren or your family, it's a wonderful introduction, the hardships of the voyage, and when they got here and how tough it was when they began.
And
So
we just added a new book for grade 7, and it's called The Boy Who Fell Off the Mayflower. And it's with John Howland, who went right over the edge, and fortunately they managed to pull it back on. So, but that's also, the books are beautifully, beautifully illustrated.
Nice.
Lots of history in them, and they're all available at the Plantation.
Well, thank you for that, Virginia. It's very informative, and as I said, encyclopedic knowledge. It's wonderful when we're passionate about the things that interest us. Anyway, thank you both. Just
You're welcome.
stay there for a moment. I'm just going to address the group and say thank you for being here. You've been a wonderful audience. As I mentioned, this is our last program of this season. We will start within a month planning our programs for next year. This program was planned about 10 months ago, so we try to line people up that far in advance so we can publicize by September, October what we're going to be doing for the entire upcoming year worth of conversations. The list, I think, went around and talked about being able to sign. Oh, some people have gotten, where did it end up? Clipboard? Well, fine, I think it's on a desk back here. There is a clipboard here where you can sign up for the different committees, and one of them being the Conversations Programming Committee, where you can join with us and tell us what you'd like to do and help us in pulling together the conversations for the next year. And even if you aren't on the committee, if you want to suggest ideas to us, we're wide open to that. We want to do things that you people want to learn about and have conversations that you people want to partake in. So that's very important to us.